Welcome to a new episode of FI Spotlight. I'm your host, Brittany Borer. This week we are talking about MìLà. The Seattle-based dumpling shop opened in 2018 to rave reviews, but when COVID hit in 2020, they quickly adapted by starting a line of frozen dumplings in addition to reopening their shop. Since launching nationwide shipping in November of 2020, they've sold more than 30 million dumplings to date and raised more than $30 million in VC funding. But the journey to start up a frozen food CPG line is vastly different than opening a restaurant. What were the challenges and lessons learned along the way? I'd like to welcome MìLà co-founder Jen Liao to the show to tell us more. Jen, thanks for joining us on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So tell us about MìLà.
So MìLà we're a frozen Chinese food company, and we started as a D2C company that delivered this Chinese frozen food straight to your door. Now we've expanded into retail, and we hope to have many different products for our consumers to be able to consume.
You started in 2018 as a takeout counter fast casual dumpling shop, then COVID hit, causing you to re-strategize. But you continue the shop to this day and added frozen dumplings to your repertoire. This is not a small decision. Can you talk about the process of coming to that decision to evolve?
Yes, so we had been open for about a year and a half at this point when COVID had hit. And as Brittany mentioned, we shut down the restaurant for about 3 weeks. And during those 3 weeks, we started to just brainstorm what else we could be doing with the business. And we started to experiment with frozen soup dumplings. So our restaurant item, the main hero product, was something called 𝗟𝗶𝗵𝗋, which is a pan-fried soup bao, which is also a Shanghainese street food, and it's very delicious, but there aren't very many places that serve it. During COVID, when we started to experiment with frozen soup dumplings, which is the cousin of the 𝗟𝗶𝗵𝗋, we really had started with putting it into a Ziploc bag, in a brown paper bag, and we literally would just drive to people's homes and drop it off on their porch, put it in a cooler, and then text message them and say, hey, your dumplings have been dropped off. Please take them home so that they don't melt. So that's how we got started. And we had started within like a 10-mile radius of the restaurant. And then we started to expand further and further out from Greater Seattle to Washington to Pacific Northwest, West Coast, and then as Brittany mentioned, nationwide, November 2020. So it really was a stepwise thing for us to continue to expand the business as we ventured into this. And along the way, we just saw very strong product market fit and demand. Whenever we had opened to a new location, there were even further out requests and referrals to be able to deliver to that location or that state. And then when we had started online ads, for example, it was really working for us, and we saw a very viable path to continue to scale. So each of those data points and signals allowed us to keep going and expanding our operations.
And how about your experiences of manufacturing a Chinese food product within the American CPG business framework? Were there challenges, and how did you navigate around that?
Yes, so for the Chinese food industry, it's very fascinating as we've gotten into it. Caleb and myself, my co-founder, and I, we didn't really come from a food and bev or CPG background. And so this was all new to us as we uncovered it while we built the business. And for the Chinese food industry, it's been around for a very long time. It's oriented towards building out infrastructure for restaurants. 8% of US restaurants are Chinese restaurants. However, if you go to an American grocery store, for example, only 2% of frozen foods are actually Chinese frozen foods. So there's a pretty big gap in terms of restaurants and frozen food in the grocery aisle and what infrastructure has been built there. So as we went, one example is we launched a noodle product about a year and a half at this point ago. And we had to switch our noodles about 10 times. And we had found the perfect noodle and benchtop as we were doing recipe development. And while we were going about this, we found that the perfect noodle we selected couldn't be sourced. at volume, or the people that the companies that could produce it, they didn't have certifications, they weren't regulated, they weren't really set up for retail purpose. It was to supply other restaurants. And then the ones that were set up for retail purposes, they couldn't scale or package it the way that we needed to. So this is a very, I think, prototypical thing that we had encountered along the way, which was different pieces of different components of what we needed to make, we couldn't readily find available.
There are significant differences between being a restaurant owner and being a business owner in the frozen food CPG industry. Let's talk about your experiences in this transition. Can you go into what you've called the chef mindset versus the commercial scaling mindset?
Yes, so I think I'll just zoom into our R&D team a little bit. So we had first recruited a couple of different chefs to be on this team. And what we had discovered was actually that the process for a CPG company and commercializing a product, having it at scale, having it very consistent, you've locked the recipe, is very different from what is the mindset in a restaurant typically. So the chefs that we had brought on, they were really great at flavors, coming up with innovative dishes, for example. But then when we had to implement an experimental framework where we were doing A/B testing, we had gold standard, we had controls, and every single cutting, for example, we need to have the control from last time that we all agreed was the best, and then all of the new versions, for example. It was really hard to implement this very disciplined process where you couldn't touch the previous recipe and you had that same exact thing to cut against all the other ones. And then once you locked the recipe, it once again was not able to be changed. And so we had to look for suppliers that were able to scale. We had to look at other commercial ingredients that maybe isn't exactly the way that you would do it, coming from fresh ingredients cooked in a restaurant. And how do you evolve that to a CPG product that once again you could scale and commercialize in an effective and consistent way. So that kind of culture difference, I think we felt for a couple of years on our first iteration of the team. But then going into recruiting people from the CPG landscape, once again, because Chinese food industry hasn't really penetrated the CPG retail sector very much, it's actually very hard to find people from a Chinese food background who have worked in CPG to join the team. And so we've had to really look at what is the right composition of the team to be able to satisfy understanding Chinese cuisine and flavors, being able to evolve that in an innovative way, but then also implement standardized, scaled, commercialized procedures to be able to have a product that is locked.
You've gone from debuting your frozen dumpling product in 2020 D2C. Now you are in Target, Sprouts, Whole Foods, Sam's Club, and you offer shipping nationwide on your website. How were you able to overcome the challenges of breaking into the frozen food market? It can be quite difficult to make a mark for the first time.
Yes, so frozen food is a unique area of the CPG industry because the space that is available is much smaller. And so it's quite competitive to get into the freezer aisle itself. And then once you get into the freezer aisle itself, there's very limited ways to be able to attract attention to your item. So for us, we had the benefit of, because we had the D2C business, then we had people who had already tried our soup dumplings online. We had people who had seen our ads but not committed to making the purchase online yet. And there was this pent up demand for when we start to go into retail that they would go and seek this item and this brand there. And so we're able to tell a really great story for the retailers and showing them that if they were able to put this on the shelf, how their velocities would look, for example, how it's incremental to the category once they took a chance on putting our product out there. So that was really beneficial to us. Also, because we had it available on D2C first and it was nationwide, then a lot of these retailers, some of their buyers or their R&D chefs that are with the company, they had actually ordered it online and they were able to try the product ahead of time themselves and believe that, oh, okay, this is a great product. I really like it. We need to bring that in. So there was some proactive drawing from the retailers. And we did a lot of small tests to start with for local retailers who are willing to do price different price adjustments to see if that affected velocity. They were willing to share data with us. They were willing to try different products to see if there was a difference in terms of product selection that would impact the customer. And we worked really closely together with them to put together case studies and packages for larger retailers as we went into expansion.
What would be the biggest lesson learned in this whole manufacturing experience? The best piece of advice you could give to fellow restaurateurs looking to delve into CPG as well?
So I think for us, our biggest lesson as we went was that not everybody starts with manufacturing in-house. I wouldn't say that that was a bad choice. I think that's become a really great moat for us, actually. But that probably is something that if we had come from the industry, would have known that that's not typical and maybe would not have pursued that. But I think the benefit of it was that we had control over our product and the standards that we wanted to set for the product. And we were able to start small and continue to scale that. And I think the biggest lesson is like, there's so many different ways to gather those initial data points to see if you truly have product market fit, if there's demand, if there's interest from your audience, and see what the potential ceiling of your product is right from the get-go. And if you're not feeling that natural product market fit, I think there are a couple of different paths, which is to continue to try different products until you get to product market fit, or invest in product education to get it there. For us, we were very lucky in that we were at the intersection of, COVID and Chinese food becoming more prominent and popular. And there was some education from more high profile restaurants that really set the bar in terms of, here's a really great product, here's the price point, here's how you should think about it. And we're able to take advantage of some of those trends to move into the space. But it's really being honest, intellectually honest about, do you have product market fit? Do you have the demand? And then being able to accelerate into that when you feel it.
Jen Liao, co-founder of MìLà, thanks so much again for your time today.
Thanks so much for having me. It was a great conversation.
And as always, you can check out more of our great content by clicking on this playlist. Until next time, I'm Brittany Borer with the Food Institute.